What is up, everybody? It is time. The Super Bowl has long passed, and it is time to dive into the off-season of fantasy football because Dynasty truly never ends, does it, Devin?
No, never. Time continually marches on, and we are always going to continue to pray for the next draft that we partake in.
So, for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be covering all the great positions this week, quarterbacks, next week, defenses and special teams, the week after kickers, and then the last week, individual defensive players. Right? Got all the good ones?
Placeholders, long snappers,
Yeah.
Urban Meyer,
Punters.
ownership groups.
Dan Snyder's at the bottom.
Stadium hot dogs.
Stadium, that'd be a good one.
But best dog to get at the ballpark. Redacted. We're no longer a baseball show.
All right. So, of course, we're just going to dive into however many quarterbacks we have. Any fantasy questions, fantasy content, just jump in the chat and let's go. All right. Number one overall in your mind. I kept Josh Allen at the top. Devin put Patrick Mahomes. The only reason why I have Josh Allen still as number one is because it took an insane amount of turnovers, regression, and basically playing with a bad elbow versus an MVP season that Patrick Mahomes had for Josh Allen to finish QB number 2 this year. In fantasy, I'll say it before and I'll say it again. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in this current generation going right now. But in terms of fantasy points, as long as Josh Allen is still running the ball 4,000 times, it feels like, and is the team's leading rusher, that small upside that he's getting that Mahomes is not getting. Now, Mahomes runs, but he doesn't have designed runs like Josh Allen does. I feel like that's what put Josh over the top for me.
Yeah, my guy in Dynasty for this year and probably the next year and the year after that. And probably until Mahomes is done in Kansas City, I don't think I can put anybody above him. I've got one stat that I've been looking at over the last 15 minutes because, I come prepared. Off the top of your head. Oh, okay. So 2020 Josh Allen also fits this criteria. My bad. So out of the last decade plus of fantasy quarterbacks, can you name, there are 4 starters that have per game put up 25 points or more for a full fantasy season. Can you name the 4 quarterbacks since 2012?
Lamar Jackson.
He has the highest output. He had like 28 a game in 2019 or something like that.
His MVP season.
Correct. He's had the single best quarterback. He had 28.11 his MVP year in 15 games.
I'm going to safely assume one is Patrick Mahomes.
Okay.
I don't think Allen's going to crack that list.
Josh Allen did do it in 2020.
He did do it. Okay, so
he barely made the cut. He barely made the cut at 25.32. And
is it going to be some obscure answer like Phillip Rivers?
No, it's not Blake Bortles.
Who's the last one?
Peyton Manning, 2012.
Oh, that would make sense.
Yeah, it was
the 2012 is what threw me off.
Oh, sorry, 2013 was Manning's. That's the last decade. Yeah, he did 25.62, and there are 5 total seasons. Patrick Mahomes is the only guy in the last 10 years to put up 25 points per game in a fantasy season more than once. If there is a way to replicate that, I'm going to bet on Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Because until I'm proven wrong, I'm not going to assume that I'm wrong. Josh Allen's great. Josh Allen's fine. They were separated by more than almost 20 points this year in a grand total. And I just don't see Mahomes falling to the same pitfalls as a Josh Allen. As good as the Bills are and as good as Sean McDermott was over the years, we could see what happens whenever Bieniemy's no longer a part of the Chiefs' offense. But I think Andy Reid is a far bigger part in the offense than Sean McDermott was for the Bills. And that was proven with Daboll taking the Giants to the playoffs this year. And Josh Allen considerably struggling with holding onto the ball. Because it's all fine and dandy and the legs help him. So he's able to not crater and be a top 8 quarterback. He was still top 2 thanks to his legs. But there's not an arm I trust more than Patrick Mahomes. There's not an arm that can make more throws, that can make the throws whenever they count. I'm going to put my money on Patrick because everybody should. There's a clear separation, not only in fantasy, but in real football. And it might not translate to the QB1 every single year, but this year Mahomes is QB1. We go to 2021. Mahomes is QB4. In 2020, Mahomes finished QB4. In 2019, let's see where Mahomes finished. 2019, where are you, Patrick? He was QB8, and he only played 14 games, got QB8. 2018, he was QB1 by over 60 points. You don't get separations like that at quarterback, and the only time we've seen somebody finish a year as the QB1 with a lead of more than 50 was 2018, and then we had the most dominant ever in Lamar Jackson whenever he put up 421 to Dak's 348. Because, yes, Josh Allen has had some fine and dandy years, but the year he beat out Herbert, it's about 24 points in 2021, and it's a separation of less than 15 whenever he beat out Kyler in 2020. So that's the biggest thing for me. It's like whenever I'm staking a claim as the one guy that I want above everybody else, it's not just because they're going to get QB1 every single year. It's because whenever they do get QB1, there is a clear separation. Because QB1 to QB6, it's usually around 30 points on a full season, and that's 18 games. To extrapolate that, you're going to have to win at the other positions. But there's probably not a single bigger advantage than Mahomes, unless you're looking at his teammate Travis Kelce.
Yeah, especially at that position. And yeah, Dable leaving was a huge thing for sure. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. So I'm gonna hope that, like, I feel like 1 and 2 are very close and interchangeable for me. Like, if the slightest thing goes against Josh anymore going into this season, like if somehow Stephon Diggs left, if Stephon Diggs left or got traded or whatever, done. That's it.
And I think the biggest thing for me with Mahomes is the fact that everybody was like, well, what's Mahomes going to do now that he lost one of his 1-2 punch? And he followed it up with arguably the best season of his career. And I get it. 2018 is like he went nuclear, but it's an understatement to say what Mahomes did this season was less than Herculean.
Yeah.
Because he threw for 5,000 yards, if I'm correct.
This season?
Yeah, he threw for like 5,000 plus. I don't know how many touchdowns the dude threw up, but
52, 50, 41 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 358 yards rushing, 4 rushing touchdowns. 5 didn't lose any fumbles. And then so only the 12 picks. Whereas Josh Allen probably the turnovers were absolutely insane.
They weren't that insane though. He threw 15 picks the year prior and 10 the year before that. The problem with Josh Allen this year is the fact that he was throwing them at terrible times. Like Josh Allen turned the ball over pretty much status quo for his career.
He fumbled the ball 13 times this year. Only lost 5 of them, but okay.
But that's my point. Like the turnovers, I get the fumbles are bad, but if your team recovers it, it's not really anything that's super bad against you. But he's thrown 10 plus interceptions every year besides his second year in the league.
Yeah.
So the interceptions are baked into him at this point. He's going to throw 15 to 16 a year. He's a gunslinger. Yeah. Unlike our guy, Patrick, who at the peak of his career, he threw 13. And beyond that, he's had finishes of rookie year. I'm not going to count it. He had 1 pick. 14 games in 2019, 5 picks. He played 15 in 2020 and threw 6 interceptions. This year he had 12. The year prior he had 13. But he's throwing the ball 600 plus times. I get the Rodgers numbers were insane for the longest time, but what Mahomes is doing is just as impressive, if not more impressive. It's an interception percentage of less than 2% for his career. Josh Allen, we'll pull up the numbers just because I like to defend my point. Josh Allen is fine as a QB1. I understand the argument. But Josh Allen's at a flat 2.3 for his career interception percentage. Whereas we look at Mahomes, it's 1.6. And I can guarantee, obviously, Mahomes is going to have more attempts. He's been in the league longer. No, he hasn't. They've both been playing since 2018. So he has a little bit more attempts, lower percentage of interceptions, dwarfs him in touchdowns, 6,000 more passing yards. Mahomes is better. As disrespectful as it is to say, Mahomes clears. And it shouldn't be that close. Because if you're looking to make up on the margins, we look at Josh Allen. I'll pull up his rushing statistics just, for heaven's sake. So he's got 3,000 rushing yards for his career and 38 touchdowns. It's pretty good, It's really good. Mahomes for his career rushing on the ground, he has 1,547 yards. He has 12 touchdowns. So Josh Allen does make up quite a bit on the ground.
Yeah.
Yes. But that's over 4 years. So you're not getting that 2-to-1 ratio out of the rushing attack because that's the biggest problem. Because Josh will get you more yards, and on a year he could get maybe 6 to 7 more touchdowns on the ground if we're being considerate to Josh as a runner. Because Josh, he put up some rushing touchdowns 8, 9, 8, 6, 7. And I don't think he's going to keep up that 8 touchdown pace for his entire career. The yards should be similar. It's back-to-back years of 700 plus. You can't laugh at that.
Yeah,
but
it's the fact that he threw for almost less than 1,000 yards less than Mahomes did.
And he had 6 less passing touchdowns, 2 more picks, countless number of fumbles over Mahomes. And the completion percentage to me it's not concerning, but I wish it were better.
Yeah,
63% for back-to-back years, if I'm correct. We look at Mahomes. This is going to be 66.3 for his career, and his worst finish has been 62.9. His first year, he played 1 game. Beyond that, it's 65.9. His second year in the league, whenever he missed 2 games due to injury. So not only does Mahomes throw the ball more often, he's more accurate, he's more efficient in the red zone, he scores more touchdowns through the air, and unless Josh Allen is hitting double-digit rushing touchdowns, because the thing that would make Josh Allen indisputable QB1 is if he had a Jalen Hurts rushing production season this year.
Yeah.
That's what does it. But I don't expect him to do that because I think this team is going to get him a running back at some point.
Well, I mean, with Jalen Hurts, it's just the touchdowns. So they have similar yards. Their yards are very similar, very close. But Jalen Hurts gets way more QB sneak touchdowns and generally runs it in more. Honestly, the only reason why Jalen Hurts probably wasn't QB1 is because he got hurt. If he plays those last 2 games, he might be able to clear Mahomes. Maybe.
He has a shot. Well, actually, I lied. Jalen Hurts actually averaged 26.76 points per game this year. So he's in that club as well.
Oh, never mind.
Finished QB1.
It would have been close. Hurts would have had to get upwards of 50 points in the last 2 games.
He was averaging 26 a matchup.
So doable, yeah.
He could have cleared.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. A big thing for me is looking at looking at this year. My biggest thing is I think the biggest riser of anybody in fantasy next year is going to be Justin Fields. We'll get to him later.
Yeah.
But based upon the floor of his production this year, because from QB5 to QB4 is about 50 points, 51 points of separation. Out of all the quarterbacks in the top 10, Justin Fields had the worst passing season of anybody. And I don't think it's remarkably close. Like Jalen Hurts didn't burn the place down. He had 3,700 yards, but his rushing touchdowns helped. Justin Fields was going to break the single season rushing record that was established like a year ago, 2 years ago. Like Fields had almost 1,200 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. Whenever we're talking, that's the thing. Josh Allen is never going to be Lamar Jackson. Jalen Hurts is never going to be Lamar Jackson. Justin Fields could be Lamar Jackson if he has it within himself to throw for more than 2,000 yards. If Justin Fields gave you his rushing production with 4,000 passing yards, I think that's probably the scariest season we've ever seen. Yeah. And he was close to 20-plus passing touchdowns, and he only had 11 picks. So if they get him some weapons and the offense can be like consistently decent, Justin Fields, he's going to win leagues next year. That's all I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. He should have won you a couple leagues this year, depending on how your team was laid out. But Justin Fields is going to go where Jalen Hurts went this year, in my opinion, for fantasy purposes.
And to make it really easy.
Yeah, it's a flip-flop.
Yeah.
It's a summer sandal. Everything you said for Josh Allen to be number 1 is what I'm saying for him to be number 2. A big thing about Josh Allen for me.
So I just want to make this clear. If we did a dynasty startup right now and you are the 101, you're picking Patrick Mahomes.
I gotta look at the age. It's closer than people would like to give credit, but I would like to say that I would take Mahomes. Because the thing is, we know as long as Andy Reid is alive,
27 for Patrick Mahomes, 26 for Josh Allen.
The age doesn't matter. Like it's Patrick Mahomes. It would take Reid and Kelsey retiring in one fell swoop and Mahomes falling to earth.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, for Patrick Mahomes, in the case of a Patrick Mahomes, that we have not seen a greater combination of talent, production, and winning ever. Ever. This is the best 5-year stretch any quarterback has ever put together. And I will die on that hill. I am a Chargers fan, for the love of God. I actively root against this man. This man is the bane of my existence for 2 games every year. He is the boogeyman. He is the statistics of Peyton Manning, the winning of Tom Brady. And if this is the first 5 years, I would love to see what's going to be the next 5. Because I don't think it slows down. It would take Reid retiring and some incompetent dude becoming coach. It would take Travis Kelce retiring and the front office defecating on themselves for half a decade. Because if they were going to fall apart, it was this year. But the thing is, if the Chiefs keep drafting the way they are, they keep retooling. And the bones are still strong and they're going to keep going. So the bottom's not going to fall out. And after the bottom not being able to fall out, it's all upon the guy calling the shots as the quarterback. And he wasn't even 100% for the playoff run. And they still pulled it out. And a big deal for me is the problem that I saw in the Super Bowl against the Bucs in 2020. 2021. Mahomes was alone effectively. Like Tyreek Hill's a stud, Kelsey's a stud. The offensive line sucked, and the defense couldn't stop anybody.
Yeah.
He got help in the Super Bowl, which is great to see. And if he keeps getting help like that, he'll win way more Super Bowls. But in the same vein, he didn't. His only 1,000-yard receiver was what? Travis Kelce. I think the next closest would have been Juju. I think so, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Juju had 933 yards. What I'm saying is Mahomes doesn't need – because what Tua did this year is incredibly impressive. What Burrow has done over the last couple of years. But he has multiple 1,000-yard receivers. If you look at Justin Herbert this year, he threw for 4,000 plus, 4,700 yards. He didn't have a single receiver go over 1,000 yards. Mahomes is doing that to the nth degree. He had Kelsey, and that was it, and he threw for 5,000 straight up. That is confidence that you can't take away. Josh Allen has Stephon Diggs, and that is great, but he barely cracked 40. He didn't even crack 4,300 yards. I get progression is not always constantly straight up, and there are peaks and valleys, but in order to overtake a guy that has been arguably nothing but peak to this point, it takes a lot for me to supplant him.
Right.
Like if Josh Allen was Jalen Hurts this year for 2 to 3 years in a row, and he just wasn't making mistakes the way that he does, easily Josh Allen. But the problem is, I think the separation between the legs with Mahomes and Allen isn't far enough to where the arm of Mahomes is outweighed in the grand total. For me, I love rushing upside, but in the same vein, nothing is better at quarterback than a floor that you can trust.
Yeah. All right. Number 3. The only reason why I don't have Hurts at 3 is literally because I just want to see it happen again. The ban of the possible ban of the QB push is interesting to think about. If that brings less touchdowns for Jalen Hurts. But we've said it before, and we'll say it again. The Eagles are probably close to the most talented team in the NFL. They just ran into the most talented player in the NFL in the Super Bowl. And I really believe that Jalen Hurts can do it again. He finished number 3, and he didn't play for 2 games. He arguably could have finished number 1. If he can if they get him like another weapon, or if like maybe if they draft Bijan Robinson, that's something to think about. Who knows if they hammer him? But Jalen Hurts obviously is insane for me. I've just seen Burrow do it. And like you said, he has multiple 1,000-yard receivers. And I feel like that almost helps his case in a sense because he has such good weapons. It's going to help him in the long run. Mixon is definitely kind of fallen a little bit, and their line is not outstanding. So that that came up in the AFC Championship game. But Burrow finished 4th. I feel like he's just right there for me in terms of as long as he has the weapons. If he like lost T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, then I would have something to think about for sure. I could probably put him 4 and Jalen Hurts 3. But obviously you were very impressed by Jalen Hurts.
So my Jalen Hurts at 3 is essentially your Josh Allen at 1. Joe Burrow is my number 5. And there's probably a bit of bias baked into the fact that Justin Herbert's my number 4. Justin Herbert outpaces him in every single category besides as a professional athlete. Justin Herbert has done more with the ball in his hands in terms of just raw statistical output. He was okay. So I'm going to be back on Jalen Hurts. I get what you're saying about do it again. There's not a single quarterback who is set up for more repeat success in football than Jalen Hurts right now. Because, yes, what Joe Burrow has in Cincinnati is great. His defense is not as good as Philadelphia's. His offensive line is worse than Philadelphia's. A.J. Brown's on a fucking max contract, pardon my French. A.J. Brown is locked in. Devonta Smith is on the same deal that Jamar Chase is on. T. Higgins is going to have to get paid. Jamar Chase is going to have to get paid. And Joe Burrow is going to get paid. So I think the Eagles' blueprint is easier to replicate moving forward because their timeline – while it is, and they're on the same timelines, but Brown's money's already inked. Jamar Chase is resetting the market, depending on who signed. So Justin Jefferson is going to set the market, and the year after this one, Jamar Chase will then reset the market. Rent is due, and it's always going up. The A.J. Brown deal was the best deal in that division the day it was signed in terms of wide receivers because it was signed before CeeDee Lamb. And so that's the point I'm making because I think Joe Burrow might make more money than Jalen Hurts per year. Because Jalen Hurts hasn't done it like that. So the Eagles, in a sense, could have similar production for a cheaper price, which means a better overall team. And I don't care if they get rid of the whole you can't push behind the quarterback. That's fine. Jalen Hurts is a world-class athlete, and he's strong enough to be able to force himself through a quarterback sneak. I think his legs are about the most replicable thing we're going to see out of fantasy for the next 2 to 3 years. Because unlike Lamar, unlike Justin Fields, something about Jalen Hurts, he's just built for this and the way that he can run the ball and tuck it. Joe Burrow, honestly, could flip him and Herbert at my 4 or 5 spot. I'm going to put Herbert at 4. So that's just my guy. Call me a homer. I don't really care. So Burrow's great. Don't get me wrong. I just projecting for the future. I think I genuinely think the Bengals bottom can fall out faster than Philadelphia's. And I'm interested to see how they're going to keep the parts around Joe and make the team consistently compete.
Right. Here's my issue with Justin Herbert at 4. Because I obviously have Jalen Hurts at 4. And I don't think I really need to defend that more than anything. He played really well. He could easily hop Burrow. And if Josh Allen regressed, he could easily hop Josh Allen. I don't think he'll hop Patrick Mahomes anytime soon, though. Justin Herbert finished number 11 last year, finished 2 the year before him. So he had a damn good 2021. My problem is not Justin Herbert himself. Justin Herbert's 24 years old. He has the physique. He has good, decent running ability. He doesn't have any rushing touchdowns. So obviously that hurts the numbers in a sense in terms of just fantasy points. My problem is everything around him. So like you said, he didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver. Why? Because they were all hurt.
Yeah.
Brandon Staley, Joe Lombardi's gone, and it'll be interesting to see with Kellen Moore. But from what I've seen with Kellen Moore, with I don't want to call Dak a gunslinger, but like a heave it kind of guy who can do that. He didn't go that route. So I just really need to see what Kellen Moore is going to do, and if the bodies around Justin Herbert can stay healthy, because we talked about it all season long. They looked like god awful in the second half most games. The Chargers did, and it obviously hurt Justin's numbers significantly, and obviously the injuries hurt his numbers significantly. So that's the only reason why I can't put him at 4 yet, because I just don't know what's ahead for him.
My biggest thing about the whole Justin Herbert conjecture, it's simple. The peak of what I've gotten out of Justin Herbert for a fantasy season is higher than what I've gotten out of Joe Burrow. Statistically speaking, Burrow had a better year this year. Congratulations. In 2021, the only quarterback to clear Justin Herbert was Josh Allen. The separation between Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert was 40-plus points. They both played 16 games. The only difference was Herbert consistently put up almost 3 more points than Joe Burrow that season. And let me remind you, that was the year Jamar Chase lit the world on fire, and T. Higgins also paired up for 1,000 yards. Justin Herbert not only played this season without most of his weapons healthy, he himself was not healthy. From week 2 on, he was dealing with broken ribs, elbow issues, shoulder issues, you name it. He had surgery on his labrum this offseason. And I get it. He's coming into an offense that's going to have another new offensive coordinator. For the bulk of his career up to this point, he was coming into off seasons with a brand new offensive coordinator, and the only time he hasn't produced is this year with a repeat of Joe Lombardi, who should be calling plays for a Pop Warner team at this point. That's how bad the play calling was this year. You have a man that has an arm that rivals the likes of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and his depth of target was like league worst or bottom 5. It was that bad. Kellen Moore has the capacity and the ability to turn Justin Herbert into the QB1 in fantasy next year, if everything goes right. And in the same vein, could Joe Burrow be the QB1 next year? Sure, if everything breaks his way. But I think who Joe Burrow has been is what he is going to be. And I feel like Herbert has more to unlock. Because if I'm going to just look at the raw stats. So, and this is no knock to Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a better winner than Justin Herbert, but winning is a team stat. It's not a quarterback stat. I don't care. So for their careers, 24-17-1, 25-24-0. Herbert has a winning record, mind you. He's played in 49 games, and Burrow's played in 42. Burrow has 11,774 yards. Herbert has 14,089. Herbert has thrown 94 touchdowns in his career. 82 for that of Joe Burrow. 31 picks for Joe Burrow, 35 for Justin Herbert. Career fantasy points to date, 992.9 for Justin Herbert, 838.6. And those 7 games is he making up that 100-plus point cushion. Averages could say he's in the realm. But on a counting stat basis, with worse weapons and terrible injury luck, Justin Herbert is a better producer than Joe Burrow. And I know what you're going to say, because I think a thing for Joe Burrow to this point is the aura around him. He's a winner. I don't care in fantasy football. Some of the best seasons in fantasy football history are for teams that aren't really going to win anything. Hell, look at Lamar in 2019. He had the single greatest quarterback season in fantasy history. He lost in like the second round or the first round. I don't care about Super Bowls for my fantasy quarterback. Do I believe Herbert could get there one day? Yes. But do I also believe Herbert could be the QB1 for a full season? I also believe that. And I think Kellen Moore's creative enough to the point where Justin Herbert's finally going to start finding pay dirt with his legs. Because
100%.
I think based upon this year, Herbert himself put up, so he was 12th in the league. He put up 16.9 per game. He was throwing to the likes of DeAndre Carter, Josh Palmer, and Michael Bandy for stretches. It was so bad this year that our go-to X spacer receiver, what the hell is his name? I forget his name. That's how little he played this year. Jalen Guyton. He was like one of our field stretchers last year or the year before this one. He went down week 2. So he was limited to partial Mike Williams, the essence of Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett whenever he was not winded, and then you had second-year Josh Palmer, one of the best returners in DeAndre Carter, and then you had practice guys catching balls. While, yes, it's hard to defend Herbert as a top 4 dynasty asset whenever he just finished 12th, but it's easier whenever you look at the track record. 2021, he was so 2022 he was 12th. 2021 he finished second. In 2020 he was still top 10, but you have to remember he missed a game. So you bring in his average, he's at least top 7 at that point. So I get it. Burrow's hot. The Bengals are fun to root for. If I had my choice over which quarterback I wanted to score more fantasy points on any given week, I am going to go with Justin Herbert. Fully healthy. That's all. Fully healthy team for team. I don't know how much more Joe Burrow can get out of the weapons that he has, personally, especially with Joe Mixon staying there. Eventually, Tyler Boyd or one of those receivers is going to move on and go somewhere else. Because I think the longevity of the team is going to depend upon them paying Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and having money to pay other pieces on like the defense. And I don't think T. Higgins, because T. Higgins is going to get one money.
I think T. Higgins is going to walk.
They're not going to be. They're going to franchise him. He's going to get stuck in the franchise tag cycle, and they're going to end up having to trade him or Jamar Chase. One of because that's the thing. The Dolphins got it right. They traded for Tyreek. Tyreek's on a huge contract. It's not going because the thing with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase is there's a friction now because they're 1 year apart and they haven't been paid yet. And that's just a problem. It's what's good about the Eagles and why I like Jalen Hurts because A.J. Brown's not going to go anywhere. They don't have to worry about A.J. Brown. They can restructure his contract. They can move money around and they'll work it out. Stephon Diggs with Josh Allen, if they had a younger receiver that wasn't Gabe Davis to complement Stephon Diggs, would be the same idea. It's what made Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson so good at the very beginning. If you have a receiver on bigger money that's just as talented as your star young guy, it works far better than young guy and young guy both needing to get paid in similar off seasons.
This makes sense. Our top 5 is virtually the same.
Yeah.
Is what it is. You just throw a couple of names around our top 5, our top 7, our top 8, our top 10. I'm just going through. Our top 10 is virtually the same, just kind of moved around a little bit. Just for me, it's the unknown of Justin Herbert. Everything you're saying is right. I cannot refute what the talent that Herbert has, what he did last year. I just don't. And it's probably a bias for me because of Kellen Moore, of what I see. And I'm not going to say that Dak Prescott has anywhere near as the talent that Justin Herbert has. I would much rather have Justin Herbert as a Dallas Cowboys quarterback. We'll give you a 5th round pick.
So it's the only difference between Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert this season, besides health, is it's touchdowns. That's really all that it is. Herbert had 2 more picks because for everyone that's on the soapbox that Joe Burrow is the most accurate quarterback in the NFL, Justin Herbert was 0.1 percentage points worse than Joe Burrow this previous season. 68.3 for Burrow in the completion percentage, 68.2 for Herbert. Burrow had more yards per attempt. Average air yards or adjusted yards gained per attempt, 6.9. Herbert had 9.9 yards per passing completion. Burrow had 10.8.
And the thing is, Austin Eckler had 13 rushing touchdowns. Mixon and Pirine only had 9. So that's 4 less touchdowns. That's 4 more touchdowns on Herbert or on Burrow and 4 taken away from Herbert. So he kind of has that thing too. Just going, obviously, Austin Eckler's insane. He got 5 receiving touchdowns, 722 receiving yards. Obviously, he's a big boost for Justin Herbert. But Eckler does get a lot of rushing touchdowns too, and that's 4 to 6 points taken away each time.
And a big thing for Herbert too is his rookie year he had 5 touchdowns. Second year he had 3. He only ran for 147 yards and no touchdowns this year. The ribs were a huge factor. If Herbert's not hurt, Herbert can make the plays that Mahomes makes with his legs. In terms of athletic ability, I think I trust Herbert more rushing out of the pocket to try and get those first downs than I do a body like Joe Burrow's. Herbert is a physical specimen. But back to the Burrow point, if Herbert's team is a bit more lucky with injuries and Herbert doesn't break his ribs, I think over the entirety of a season, I could kind of see Herbert breaking 30 touchdowns. Herbert also threw the ball almost 100 times more than Herbert. Or Herbert threw the ball about 100 times more than Burrow did. So Herbert threw it 699 times this year. Burrow threw it for 606. Justin had 2 more picks than Burrow the entire season. Justin had 0.1 less percentage on his completion percentage. The difference is marginal, but throw for throw, statistically, for me, I'm going with Justin Herbert. And I know we talked about Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes to start the show. Interception percentage matters to me. For their careers, Joe Burrow has a 2% interception ratio. His interception percent is 2%. Justin Herbert, it's 1.8. Burrow threw for more touchdowns this year. That's great. But pass for pass, Herbert took care of the ball better than what Burrow has to this point in time.
And I think a thing, too, to think about, and honestly, I might even changing my own mind a little bit. We'll see. Is that Justin Herbert is 2 years younger. He's 24 compared to Joe Burrow, 26.
It's insane. That's the thing, dude. Like, because I'm not even getting into age with these guys. Yeah. Justin Herbert is so young.
Yeah.
And
the thing for me is that look at the divisions. So Joe Burrow is playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Cleveland Browns 6 times. 2 of those teams are all about defense. So realistically, and he doesn't play well against the Browns for some odd reason. So 6 games a year, he has to play some of the tougher defenses in the league. Justin Herbert has to shoot out with Patrick Mahomes. Las Vegas is terrible on defense. Denver's probably the only realistically good defense in that division. I mean, the Chargers have gotten better, but in terms of best defense in the division, it's the Broncos. And so 4 games a year, Justin Herbert at least has to put up like 28 to 35 points, it feels like. And obviously that helps him. This could move Herbert in my number 4, to be honest. Or, because then Hurts would move up to 3 for me.
Yeah, then Burrow would be your 5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting close. There's just a little too much unknown for me out of the Chargers to fully commit to it at this point. I just got to see. I could see 2 games and then be like, okay, I'm convinced. So I just don't know.
My biggest thing right now, my final point on the Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow thing, and this could sway you in favor of our boy over there in Joe Burrow. It's going to be good while T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are still there, but we don't know how bad it truly can get once one of them are gone. Right. Because the thing about Joe Burrow to this point in his career is he was not good enough to start at Ohio State, transferred to LSU, got the crap kicked out of him in a bowl game, got destroyed on that crazy hit, had the single greatest season in college football history in terms of passing the football. What history will tell you is that he had the best receiver in football and arguably the second best in terms of young guns in the league. That LSU team is one of the best we've ever seen. And it makes sense how he threw 60 touchdowns. Since his days at Ohio State, have we seen him play with less than stellar talent in terms of weapons? No. T. Higgins this year in 16 games, 1,029 yards and 7 touchdowns. Jamar Chase
out one of those games.
In 12 games. 12 games. 1,046 yards and 9 touchdowns. You want to know what the best weapons for Justin Herbert were doing this year? Mike Williams had 13 games. He put up 895 yards and 4 scores. Keenan Allen. He put up 10 games played, 752 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Justin Herbert this season not only threw for a similar completion percentage to Joe Burrow. If I'm correct, he outthrew him in terms of yards. Joe Burrow had 4,475 yards, with half of that effectively coming from his top two weapons. Justin Herbert, in comparison, threw 300 more passing yards with none of his weapons reaching 1,000 yards. I get it. Joe Burrow's had a great start post-knee injury, but when things aren't going right, I trust Herbert more than I trust Joe Burrow until he proves me wrong. Because you know what separates Mahomes from Allen? It's the floor. And for me, to the point in their careers, I think we've seen Justin at his worst so far, and it took broken ribs and all of his weapons dying, and he was still borderline top 10. But whenever everything's good and everything's par, there's very few quarterbacks that could take over him, and Joe Burrow is not in that class for fantasy purposes. Because Burrow doesn't give you anything with his legs comparatively to the other guys. Because it's basically going to be arm for arm. And the Chargers are going to have to get younger at receiver. And if there's one thing Herbert has done to this point in his career, he's elevated Mike Williams to a new contract. Keenan Allen's been great for his entire career, so I'm not going to slight Keenan Allen. But Jalen Guyton has been serviceable for fantasy. Joshua Palmer was a fantasy asset. I just think more people are relevant around Justin Herbert, and I think that's partially due to the fact that the Bengals have such talent at receiver. But we saw it with Mahomes this year. He lost a top weapon, put up the same production. If I can get a fully healthy Herbert and one of his guys isn't there, I still think he's going to put up stats. Because he fought through broken ribs and still put up almost 5,000 yards. It's not his fault the weapons couldn't score.
I will say I'm surprised to see that Burrow rushed for 5 touchdowns this year and 259 yards. That did catch me off guard. I didn't realize he rushed for 5 touchdowns. So that does help a little bit for sure.
Let me just pull up one more stat. I'm just going to look up. So NFL second half points per game. Just looking this up real quick. So the Los Angeles Chargers were 28th in the league in points scored in the second half per game for the entire year of 2022.
You ain't got to tell me twice.
They scored 8 points per second half. The Cincinnati Bengals, they put up 11.8. They were top 10. You want to know what's crazier about the Chargers? In 2021, they were actually let me just pull up the 21-21 season. So that same team in 2021, when they were healthy, and the second half of games, they were number 7 in the league with 13.7. You know who that's more than? The Cincinnati Bengals, who put up 13.4 in the second half. I rest my case.
Number 6. I'm just terrified of Lamar Jackson at this point. I'm going to make this simple, super quick.
Yeah. Looking at that, Calvin Ridley is the biggest thing that could flip me to Trevor Lawrence over Lamar Jackson.
I love the addition of Calvin Ridley.
But Lamar Jackson to Las Vegas. Lamar Jackson to anywhere that's not Baltimore could make me just go like, okay, Lamar's top 4. Because the biggest thing about Lamar Jackson, for me, I actually don't get the whole Lamar Jackson can't pass bull crap. I don't understand it. I never will.
No, I don't get it either. I just I'm trying to think of top destinations for Lamar that would put him high up for me. And it's like the Jets. I don't know what he could do in Las Vegas. Their line is terrible.
The case for Lamar Jackson is that he plays 16 games. That's it. 2020, if I'm correct, Lamar Jackson finished as he was QB 10. He was QB 10. So if you can get 16 games out of Lamar Jackson, his floor is fine. Lamar Jackson, if he's on the field, I think is a top 6 play at the quarterback position week to week. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have better weapons. I think Trevor Lawrence will arguably have better coaching. I was not a fan of John Harbaugh this year. And you could convince me that Trevor Lawrence is number 6 and Lamar's is number 7. To be honest, I'll go that route. I think Lamar we've probably seen the best situation he's had and he's going to have, because Trevor Lawrence, for as much as I love Justin Herbert, he's going to get paid this year. Same with Burrow, same with Hurts. Lawrence is like a year behind them, so they've got a couple more years before they have to extend Trevor Lawrence. Fuck it. I will put Trevor Lawrence above Lamar Jackson in Dynasty. It's splitting hairs. This offseason
No,
would be
I agree. Lamar's still only 26.
Oh, I know. Lamar's as old as Joe Burrow. Let that sink in.
Think about it. Think about it.
Big
Trevor
thing
Lawrence
for me.
is 23.
So the thing about Trevor is I don't count his actual rookie year because Urban Meyer is a football level terrorist. I said it. Trevor Lawrence followed up a ugly rookie year where he threw for 3,600 yards, which is really good.
He still threw well.
His completion percentage sucked, 59.6, but he was throwing to Laviska Shenault Jr., Jamal Agnew, and DJ Chark, or the ghost of him. He got actual weapons this year. Marvin Jones Jr., he had Travis Etienne, he had Christian Kirk, and Calvin Ridley, if he becomes reinstated, makes their receiving cores, if they can bring back an Evan Ingram, I'd say
Evan Ingram had a great year. Zay Jones had a good year.
Big thing for Trevor Lawrence is Trevor Lawrence essentially had Justin Herbert light season, genuinely. Threw for less yards, same touchdowns, 2 less picks. Less accurate, threw for less yards per game. So Trevor Lawrence, that's the thing that's going to hold me back from putting him above Lamar Jackson. Because you said you want to see Jalen Hurts do it again. I need to see Trevor Lawrence do it. Because Lamar Jackson's done it. I know Lamar Jackson has it within him.
Lamar is in one of the worst situations possible, unless he goes like the Jets. He's beat up. The Ravens' offense is terrible. They can't stay healthy. And I get it. He could still run for a shit ton of yards and finish top 5. But I agree. You want to see Trevor Lawrence do it again. But Lamar Jackson, for back-to-back years now, has not finished the season, and his team is progressively getting worse as it happens.
I understand that, but you're looking at a guy in Trevor Lawrence who is going to give you 300 yards on the ground and 5 touchdowns, 334 and 2. I get it. The arm and the weapons are it's not very close in terms of like production the last couple of years. And Lamar's only thrown for more than 3,000 yards once in his career, which concerns the hell out of me. He's thrown for 20-plus touchdowns twice. But this is the guy that put up 1,200 yards, 1,000 yards, 7 and 7 touchdowns. If he can get to another 1,000-yard season and 5 to 6 touchdowns, it doesn't matter what the arm does because Justin Fields just did it, and it was a top 5 finish.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence is going to have to be one of the best passers in football for it to pay dirt. He's going to have to be as good as he was this year, if not better, to stay in this top 7 type thing. Lamar Jackson just has to run the ball because even whenever he hasn't thrown for 3,000 yards, he's still been a top 10 threat. Because I'll pull up Justin Fields' stats right now.
I was drafting Lamar wherever I could this season. I was huge on Lamar. Week 1, he put up 21 points. Then he goes 41 and 40 in weeks 2 and 3. And then he just falls off to 15, averaging 15 a game. Had put up 22 in week 12 and then didn't play after week 13 and only put up a point in week 13. It's just, if he wants to move up for me, the only team I could realistically see him doing well is the Jets.
Well, a big thing for me is so Lamar in 12 games finished as QB 13. He put up 20.26 points per game. If he gives you 4 more games this year, if he plays a full 16, let's go ahead and do the full week 18. So that puts Lamar at QB 14. You give him 5 more games at 20 points per game.
100 points.
He's QB 5 if he plays the full year at the average he was at. Trevor Lawrence gave you his best year of his career. He barely cracked 300. Lamar put up a season with 5 less starts, and he wasn't even 100 points ahead of him. And I get it. This is all just a numbers race. But the gap between Lamar and Trevor, it's not that wide. And I don't think it's...
But the reason why it's not that wide is because of Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has ascended to the next level for sure. There's definitely another level to go. If there is a whole elite talent, he is in tier 2. We are in tier 2 at this point. We are way out of tier 1.
Well, tier 1 is like Mahomes and Josh Allen. Tier 2 then goes to the Burrow or the Hurts, Burrow, Herbert.
Yeah.
And then Lawrence and
this is like bottom tier 2 to tier 3.
Tier 2.5, tier 0.3, yeah. These are really high upside guys. You're just banking on one. He's going to get better tier 3. The other one you're banking on, can he stay healthy? Yeah, I get it. I just, especially coming off the heels of Justin Fields, literally running his way to QB5. Lamar's a better passer than Justin Fields. And not saying Justin Fields can't be better than Lamar Jackson, but Fields just barely eclipsed 60% passing for a season. He was 60.4 this year. Lamar's worst is 58.2. For his career, he's at 63.7. So, and a big thing for Lamar Jackson, he's never thrown for more than 500 passing attempts in a year. We look at the Trevor Lawrence. We've got a guy that just this year alone. So Trevor Lawrence, he threw the ball 584 times. So more likely that Trevor Lawrence replicates the usage, but if Lamar gets the green light to throw, everyone says let Russ cook. John Harbaugh has to let Lamar win with his arm if they're going to win anything anytime soon.
We agree on something.
Dead ass, dude. Justin Fields is what people thought Lamar Jackson was going to be before the MVP. Justin Fields is what I kind of expected Jalen Hurts to be this season in terms of I thought Hurts had higher upside with the arm, but I was hoping Hurts could put up over 1,100 yards on the ground. And that wasn't what came out of it. I had numerous chances to pick up a Justin Fields off the waivers this year, and I didn't. Justin Fields is who I wanted Trey Lance to be. Genuinely. I drafted Trey Lance thinking he would put up a Jalen or a Justin Fields type.
Well, and it all started against New England in week 7. So up until New England, his highest output was 18.4. Then he put up 20.3 against New England. Then he plays a damn good game, puts up 26 against Dallas. And then he goes 42 against Miami, 39, almost 40 against Detroit, 22 against Atlanta, doesn't play against the Jets, 21 against Green Bay, 21 against Philly, only 10 against Buffalo, but then 16 against Detroit. For a guy who wasn't known for running in college, almost broke the record. If he plays 17 games, honestly, if he plays 16 games, he breaks the record. But he did it in 15 games, and he just fell short of Mike Vick's record. 1,143 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. He only threw for 2,200 yards, but he threw 11 picks to his 17 touchdowns. He got sacked 55 times.
So give him a bit of a cushion there.
And who is he throwing to?
Darnell Mooney and the ghost of Cole Kmet. And Chase Claypool, who was probably not worth a first-round pick. But whatever.
I don't know what to expect out of Justin Fields moving forward, though.
Justin Fields can do to us what Lamar Jackson has done for the last 3 years. Genuinely. I hope it doesn't happen that way. But it's tough.
Yeah. Number 9. Just gonna prefix it with.
Honestly, I
literally flip.
I need to see Kyler before I can put him above Dak.
I get it.
And DeAndre Hopkins is probably gone before Kyler actually takes the field again, I think, depending on how the Cardinals start out. Because Kyler's not
I will preface it with this. If you are in a dynasty league and you kind of need a quarterback and you can get Kyler Murray at a discount because he's not going to play probably the first 5 to 7 weeks of the season. This is the time to do it. If you can catch somebody who's low on him, I feel like he's a great trade target where you can probably pay a little less for a really good quarterback who could finish top 5.
I don't think Kyler is going to be a top 5 finisher again in his career. With who's at quarterback in the league right now, I don't know if I see him being top 5. The thing about Kyler was he's gone down in passing attempts with each season he's played, aside from his second year, and that was whenever he actually broke out and was a top 5 fantasy finish.
Yep.
Never thrown more than he's never eclipsed 4,000 passing yards. He's never eclipsed 30 touchdowns. He's never ran for more than he's never rushed for more than, let me get the numbers. He's never
2020 is a big outlier for Murray. He ran for 819 yards, but it looks like his average is around
4 to 5.
4 to 450, yeah.
Yeah,
and
Kyler,
I would say 5 to 7 touchdowns.
The thing for Kyler Murray is he's on the big contract. The team's capped in terms of how they can really surround him with talent, and he's undersized. Yeah. I understand genuinely investing a ton of resources into your dynasty rosters and having a bunch of Herbert, a bunch of Mahomes, a bunch of Allen, a bunch of Hurts, a bunch of Burrow. These are formidable dudes in terms of stature and size. Kyler Murray just isn't that. He's 6 foot, 5'11". He's just not big enough, and that's not his fault. He's 5'10", 207 pounds. In comparison, Trevor Lawrence is 6'6", 213. The average offensive lineman's what, 6'4"?
Probably.
The Kyler Murray thing is cool because athletically, I think he might be the best dude pound for pound that we've seen at quarterback. But defenses don't care about the pound for pound thing. Talent doesn't always translate. And in a sport like football, he is at an inherent disadvantage as a passer. And his legs are great, but he's not using them in the way that he did in 2020. And until he engages his feet like he did that year, I don't think Kyler has the upside to even put him in the conversation of even borderline top 10. Because
here's my problem is that with Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott, past 2 years they haven't stayed healthy, both of them. The past 2 years their play callers have not. I truly believe that both of their play callers, for Dak Prescott it's Kellen Moore, for Kyler Murray it's Cliff Kingsbury, did not really use their quarterback to the fullest potential. We watched Kyler this year probably take an 0-17 team to a few wins with his legs because he is that talented. And I know Terry and ACL sucks, and it's going to be a tough comeback for Kyler for sure. And DeAndre, might be gone. He would still have Marquise Brown, which is decent. I think they would still have James Conner, but don't quote me on that. I don't know 100%. I do like James Conner when he's healthy. And he did. Just the problem is he hasn't stayed healthy. And I don't know really. I feel like Arizona lost the head coaching carousel this year. I can't honestly even. Jonathan Gannon. I think they hired Jonathan Gannon. Eagles
defensive guy.
Yeah, defensive-minded guy, which is good. Arizona's defense is terrible and does need a ton of work. But I feel like there was better opportunities for them somewhere. I don't know if they were in on Sean Payton or Kellen Moore or Frank Reich. I feel like Jonathan Gannon was kind of the lesser of the options, and they did really just pick who was ever left at that point. But I will reserve judgment to see what Jonathan Gannon can bring to the Cardinals, but they're going to be doing it with God knows who the first 7 weeks. So even then, and just the thing about Dak is now Mike McCarthy's calling plays, and I just don't. Let me pull up Dak because I feel like with Dak,
I'm looking at the raw data, and you can call me a stat watcher all you want. Dak Prescott has a similar completion percentage for their careers. He throws for more yards per game, has a lower interception percentage, and a higher touchdown percentage. Dak has played longer, so that makes the percentages even more in his favor on the touchdowns and interceptions. Dak has played for some terrible play callers. He had Jason Garrett as his head coach for the start of his career. Mike McCarthy's not much better. Kellen Moore's arguably the most creative offensive mind he's ever had at his disposal. And I think he got stale because of Mike McCarthy. Personally, I think Kellen Moore
Yeah,
better
that's
outside of
probably
McCarthy
fairly accurate.
than McCarthy outside of Kellen Moore, because the start of the Kellen Moore thing was really good. And we can't argue against that. I think.
Well, I can't argue the fact that statistically Dallas is a top 5 offense and has been for the past couple of years. And
because of Kellen Moore.
Right. And I just, like you said, he got stale. I think he got predictable.
Well, I think McCarthy's partially to blame. His entire career has been.
I agree.
Stale. And
I
think
agree.
A big thing for me is we've seen Dak do it before McCarthy. We saw him do it before Kellen Moore. If Kyler had been putting up 4,000 yards and 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, Kyler has never eclipsed 30 touchdowns, never gotten past 4,000 passing yards. And if he were getting me 800 yards yearly on the ground, completely different conversation. But Dak has proven that he's at least 3,500 to 4,000 on average whenever he's healthy after 2017, and he's 20 plus touchdowns. And fully healthy, he can give you almost 30 plus. Whenever Kyler's only going for 400 rushing yards, the separation is just not going to be there, because Dak's going to get a couple touchdowns a year. His upside is 6 plus, and he's going to get between like 100 to 200 rushing yards. So what made Kyler special in 2020 was 800 on the ground, 7 or 8 touchdowns, and the arm was talented. I just think counting stat-wise, Kyler is never going to fully translate to how we perceive him. And that's the thing in fantasy, because athletically, there's not many guys you can take over Kyler Murray. But production-wise, you could take Kirk Cousins over Kyler over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, that's what fantasy football is. Geno Smith has had a better year and a half than Kyler Murray. And that's just objective truth. The numbers back it up. And that's the thing whenever I'm arguing Herbert versus Burrow, because Herbert has stats that are better than Burrow's, and Burrow has things that are better than Herbert's. But I think Herbert's a more just imposing presence at quarterback. One thing that I can bank on with the Kyler and Dak debate is I just think that Dak is going to last longer. And this is more of a gold star for you, because I had Kyler over. I know you have
I have Kyler over Dak.
I have Dak over Kyler. So
correct.
I get having Kyler over Dak. I just, after the knee, I'm out.
I get it.
Dak came back from the ankle. Cool. And I think he can continue to do it because he hasn't ran the ball like he did. And I just think CD's a better weapon than anything Kyler's going to have. Dallas should get another weapon this draft, I'm assuming. You're probably going to get an X receiver. If the guy is there, you went and got offensive line last year.
Yeah.
Dallas
and that pick, we could talk about that.
He was good.
Draft time. That pick was a much better pick than I thought it was going to be.
It was a home run. You hated it whenever it first happened.
Yeah, I was. I won't get into it, but yeah, I could go on and on about that. Okay, so there, 11. Tua could easily not be on this list because he just may never play again, and that's easy. But Deshaun Watson looks so bad, and Tua still has all the weapons. And if Tua can play the games, then I think he will be there. And Deshaun Watson obviously is extremely talented, and we saw what he can do in Houston. And he does have Amari Cooper, and Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think, took a step up. To set a bar kind of low, he took a step up from what he used to be. And obviously Nick Chubb is, what does he average? Like fucking 4 yards a carry or something like that? 4 or 5 yards a carry. He's a monster.
Yeah.
But he just looks so bad this year that for now, Deshaun Watson is nearby for me. But I just have to up a little bit because of the talent that surrounds him, because what Mike McDaniel is a really good offensive-minded coach. And I think he can replicate what he did this year if he can play 17 games.
I get it. I understand the Tua thing. I don't hate Tua. I think Tua is remarkably talented. I think he's a little overrated in terms of his overall accuracy. Like that's his calling card, and he's less accurate than Herbert, less accurate than Burrow, less accurate than Mahomes. But albeit, he's good. He's not some bum. Tua Tagovailoa had a really tough go of it his first couple of years. He has won more games than he's lost, and that's tough to do at any level of football. Health-wise, I don't know how much longer it's going to actually kick for him. Brandon Cooks has been on retirement watch since 2018 due to concussions. Tua's going to be on the watch for the rest of his career. I don't know how many more of those he can take and walk off the field. I'm putting Deshaun over Tua because Tua has never played a full season. We don't have any proof that he can play a full season. And the last time Deshaun Watson put up a full season, it was borderline MVP caliber numbers. His team just went 4-12. I think I expected Watson to be bad this year because he has not played organized football in almost 2 years. Had more touchdowns than interceptions, had over 1,000 yards. He played in 6 games. He threw for under 200 yards per game. That's a career low. You give Kevin Stefanski, this guy, engaged for a full off season with Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Chubb, Hunt, Njoku. The weapons are there. I know he has no Tyreek Hill, but Amari Cooper, so Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are probably the best 1-2 in football. They are electric.
Yep.
But Tua was great because he was scoring touchdowns at an borderline impossible rate. His touchdown percentage was 6.3 this year. If I look at the best year of Deshaun Watson when he threw 33 touchdowns in 2020, that was a rate of 6.1. I'm going to pull up Patrick Mahomes in his first MVP, the 50 touchdown season. Now I'm going to tell you what his touchdown percentage was on that year, just to put this into perspective. In 2018, when he threw 50 touchdowns, he had an 8.6 touchdown percentage. 8.6% of his completions were touchdowns, or 8.6 of his passes on the year were touchdowns. I think it's completions. And so Mahomes had 6.3 this year for that percentage. Tua had the same mark this year. The difference? Mahomes can throw for 5,000 yards. Tua threw for 272 per game. Mahomes threw for 308.8 per game. I know. I think if Tua can get a full year, he's going to be 4,000. He's going to be 30-plus touchdowns. That's just Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle being there. I don't know if we're going to see a full 17 from him ever. And if we can't get it this year, I don't know. Because that's the thing about Tua. In Dynasty, you're getting him probably at the most he's going to cost you to this point in his career. And he could be out of the league in the next 3 years, for all we know, based upon his health. One thing I know about Deshaun Watson, for Dynasty's sake, he's not going anywhere. He just signed a 5-year deal. He's getting paid his cap hit is $55 million the next 4 years. If there's one consistent thing about Dynasty that I'm going to bank on, it's security of a job.
Yeah.
No one is taking that job from Deshaun Watson unless he does what he did this year in 6 games over 17. And I have more faith in him bouncing back than a guy named Russell Wilson, because Deshaun Watson is 27. He's 27 years old and 159 days. He is 3 days older than Patrick Mahomes. And while he's never been Mahomes in terms of the output on the field, he was probably the 1B to Mahomes' 1A in that draft class whenever they first came out. So I have Tua on my list somewhere a little bit farther down, but I would definitely probably have to lean Deshaun in Dynasty. Don't like him off the field, but in terms of the production for his career, I won't endorse Deshaun Watson, but he's on the list.
Actually, hold on. Let me fix something real quick here. I just re-looked at your list. So we're flip-flopped again.
Yep.
We are flip-flopped again. Okay. So that means I'm like 1 behind on all your guys now. But that's okay. I can adjust on the fly. Number 13, Daniel Jones versus Trey Lance. I'm just going to be blunt. I don't think Daniel Jones ever cracks the top 10 again. He finished 9. That's it. We're done.
I don't think Trey Lance ever starts again. That's the biggest thing here. Daniel Jones is probably going to be the starter for the New York Giants for at least 2 to 3 more years. Will Trey Lance ever start for the San Francisco 49ers?
For the San Francisco 49ers, maybe not, but for somebody else.
And even if he does, we're talking about a guy that wasn't complete coming out of college and a guy that has had minimal reps at the quarterback position at the pro level. I get it. Trey Lance is scintillating. I drafted him as my QB2 in a 2-quarterback league, and it burnt me. But I had Geno and I had Kirk Cousins as well. So it worked out backing up Mahomes. Trey Lance, if you can get him cheap, get him. Jordan Love, get him. There's no place to go but up. But if you are competing year over year over year and you need a quarterback, I don't think there's going to be a better deal than Daniel Jones at this point, because I understand Daniel Jones finishing top 10 year over year isn't something I'm going to brag to my future grandchildren about. But in a pinch, Daniel Jones is one of my favorite plays in fantasy history. There was the year that I lost the year where Kyler went nuclear because Daniel Jones was on my bench when he had exploded in the playoffs. Daniel Jones is not going to produce for lack of talent. I'm going to put that up front. The problem with Daniel Jones was turnovers. That was the biggest thing that held him back at the start of his career.
Right.
If he can not fumble next year and he can give you 5 interceptions, because the thing is, hear me out. There was not a single quarterback who had worse weapons this year. No.
Just about.
No,
it's pretty easy.
Lamar had better weapons. Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman got hurt. Cool.
No, yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you.
If this is the floor, I can't wait to see the ceiling. If the Giants can get a first-round wide receiver, you just got to get him somebody to throw the ball to. Because the thing about Josh Allen was reckless with the ball, turned it over, wasn't super accurate. Daniel Jones completed 67% of his passes this year. It's not about Daniel Jones, the passer. It's about Brian Daboll, the play caller and schemer. You can scheme anybody into being a fantasy asset. You can do it. Russell Wilson was great in fantasy with Pete Carroll. Derek Carr has been serviceable over time. Kirk Cousins has been top 10 for the last 2 years. This is a blueprint that works. Trey Lance is more talented than Daniel Jones, sure, but we've seen Daniel Jones apply it, and if he has talent around him, there's nowhere to go but up. Yeah. And Daboll's going to use the legs. Daniel Jones is a great talent athletically. Goofy looking, but especially if they can get him for like 30-something million a year. I get that's expensive, but that's just the going rate. I know he's trying to get 45 million a year, which seems insane. But you're talking about a guy that's 25 years old. You're talking about a guy that I don't think he has any form of an ego. And I just think coming off of that Eli Manning era, there's not a more New York Giant quarterback to have than Daniel Jones. It's been rough to start, but if Daboll's still there, I'm fully putting my interest behind him. You give him weapons, he's going to produce. I saw him with Jason Garrett. I've seen him with Joe Judge. I think the problem was coaching, personally. Because if he was bad, he would have never been a first-round draft pick. This wasn't Zach Wilson being 6'1" and playing against terrible competition. I get the ACC isn't like the SEC, but Daniel Jones is 6'6". He's 6'5", 220. He's got the build. His arm's strong enough. It's just putting him in the spots to succeed.
I feel it. I don't know. I feel like we just got hit with a flash in a pan. I really do. I'm not convinced that it's going to happen again. I don't know. I could be wrong 100%. I'm just not in love with the idea again that Daniel Jones is going to repeat what he did.
And I think a big thing too is if we're looking at it, the Daniel Jones thing, he didn't throw the ball last year or in 2021. He just didn't throw the ball. He finished at 2,400 yards, 10 touchdowns. He threw 361 times. Daboll's not letting that happen. This 472 number, his career high in pass attempts, I think it's going to be more of the standard. And if they get him more weapons, I think we could see that kind of trickle down to the mid-5s, low 6s if
Yeah.
Dable can get it to where he wants it to be. Because if we look at the Josh Allen trajectory, I'm not saying Josh Allen and Daniel Jones are the same person, but like, come on. Josh Allen threw the ball 320 times, 461, 572, 646, 567. And if I look at the years Dable was the OC, I think we could see. So offensive coordinator from, come on. I need stats. So Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, 2018 to 2021. So the first year of Josh Allen, 320 attempts. Every year after that, it grew besides this year. I will be greatly surprised if Daniel Jones does not throw more passes in 2023 than he did in 2022, which is why I am higher on Daniel Jones than you. Not saying you're wrong. We know what the floor is. I can't wait to see the ceiling. Because this feels like his new floor.
You can say I'm wrong. It's fine.
No, it's fine. I'm wrong. I just talk loud.
I know Kirk Cousins old. Don't get me wrong. But as long as he's on the Minnesota Vikings, he's going to be cracking in that area. He's balling out. Let's see. Let me get how old he is for sure. I can't remember. He's 34.
He's 34.
Finished 6th this season. 11-11 before the 2 years prior. It's not too shabby.
You're not going to lose because of Kirk Cousins, but you're not going to win most years. This is the point where I'm starting to say, you know what? Upside. Daniel Jones is young enough to where I'm like, okay, cool. If he can crack 4,000 yards and give me 500 with his legs, he's going to be around top 10. Kirk Cousins gives you nothing with his legs. He just doesn't.
That's fair.
Never has, never will. And his arm has gotten better over the years. Mike Zimmer getting fired was the best thing to happen to him for his career. He had a career high in attempts at 643 this year, 65% completion, touchdown percentage at 4.5 through 14 picks. He had his best career in a while, or best career in a while. I like Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins is fine. As a dynasty asset, I'm out on him. There are better players to have in dynasty. If you're a win now team, he's fine to put as your starter if you're in between quarterbacks. But if you're not with the top guys, I'd much rather have one of these younger dudes that's maybe less proven but has higher upside or can rush with his legs. Like, I would much rather have Trey Lance over Kirk Cousins, which is, as you saw, why I have Daniel Jones over Kirk Cousins as well. Geno, right. Kirk, Derek Carr, we know who they are. They're very viable in terms of like redraft because the separation of quarterback year over year isn't that huge. But in Dynasty, locking up the number one, number two guy is paramount for year over year success because you're locking in a floor that just doesn't seem to fall out. Kirk Cousins is a great floor, but it's not like he's top tier. He's tier 3 or tier 4. He is a low end starting quarterback in fantasy leagues. And if you have a 12-team league, he's a QB2.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'd rather pick up on upside and hope for the best as opposed to just praying the floor doesn't fall out. Because we're one Justin Jefferson injury away from Kirk Cousins being back to what he was in 2019. 3,600 yards, 26 touchdowns, totally fine, decent year, but it's not what you're wanting out of a guy to win a championship.
Right. I wasn't sure where to put Jared Goff. He's younger. I just don't know how much longer he's going to be the quarterback for the Lions. That's my biggest concern.
He's starting next year. He's 28. He's on a team. That contract sucked 4 years ago. It's one of the best quarterback deals today because of when it was signed. Like Jared Goff, he's making what, $30 million a year? Jared Goff makes earns a base salary of $20,975,000, $5 million roster bonus. His cap hit is $30,975,000. That is a great deal for the output Jared Goff is going to give you. Because if we're going to look at the numbers, 4,400.
I mean, Detroit's getting better. They have the weapons for sure. They're a great team. I just didn't know where to put them. I wasn't sure what to do with them.
I think I would
And
take Jared Goff over Kirk Cousins because I think Kirk Cousins is 1 year deal after 1 year deal until the floor falls out. Jared Goff is 5 years younger than Kirk Cousins. He still has a year after this one in terms of being under contract. Um, I just feel that I don't know. I just feel that currently I'm not gonna discount Jared Goff, especially like Kirk Cousins' price. Daniel Jones I have over Jared Goff, and I think it's pretty considerable. He's younger.
yeah,
I trust the coaching more. I think the weapons are going to come. And I think Jared Goff has better weapons currently. But in the same vein, they could totally draft a quarterback this year and have him sit for a year because history tends to favor the bold in that sense. You have a quarterback that sits, comes over second year, produces. Mahomes did it. Aaron Rodgers did it. I know it's pick and choose however you'd like, but being able to sit for a year definitely helps in the development of young quarterbacks.
the 103 for Garrett Wilson. The team trading Wilson has Murray, Cousins, and Tannehill.
I'd have to know what the skill positions on that team are because I'd rather get Stroud or
So Marvin, I guess who are your
it win now?
quarterbacks?
Yeah, is it win now for the situation? Because if your team's in essentially with Kyler Murray as the starting quarterback, he's not going to be back till midseason. You're looking at Kirk Cousins, and hopefully he can help you move forward for a year. But it would have to mean Garrett Wilson's going to be the guy that's going to be helping you get over the hump to win this year for me. Because the way the receivers come out year over year. Or will you be bad enough to have a shot at Caleb Williams next year is the big thing. For me.
Yeah, because the 103, is Stroud
or Young, yeah. So if you
which is pretty good. So
it's better than having
but I really like Garrett Wilson. The problem with Garrett Wilson is I don't know who his quarterback is going to be.
Yeah, and if you already have like stud receivers, Garrett Wilson's great, but is he going to crack the lineup weekly? It's difficult. Without more information, it's a hard call. I'd probably keep 103 with the quarterbacks you currently have. Tannehill has little value to me. Cousins has value, but
no, I think Marvin has Garrett Wilson. Oh, the team trading Wilson. Oh, you would be getting Wilson. Man.
If you're set at quarterback and you need a wide receiver, I'm comfortable moving the 103 to get Garrett Wilson. If you are the one getting Garrett Wilson. Because it's Bijan Robinson.
Oh.
I get Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. If you already have 102 and 104, I would go get Garrett Wilson then. 100%.
Yeah.
He's young. He's going to get a better quarterback, whether it be this year or next year. But the Jets are win now.
If you don't mind us asking who your receivers are, because Garrett Wilson is going to have an upgrade at quarterback this year. Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, numbers of names are in play. Jimmy Garoppolo. Garrett Wilson proved it this year. Arguably quarterback proof. I think he gets anybody in there that's not Zach Wilson or Mike White. It's going to be an improvement. So you have Watson, Mac Jones, and then the picks. If you have 102, 103 doesn't mean anything to you at that point because 102 and 103, you're going to take a quarterback, I'm assuming, at 102. And 103, you would just be then reaching for the next skill guy.
Right, where you can just go get him at 104 instead.
Exactly.
So you're trading your middle pick, you're going to get a quarterback at 102. Or if, somehow they don't take Bijan Robinson at 101, you get Bijan Robinson, which would be hilarious. But you're getting a quarterback, so you'd have Watson, Mac Jones, and either Young or Stroud. Take your pick. I guess it depends when your rookie draft is too, so that's another decision for another day. With the trade, your wide receivers would be Olave Brown, Jackson Smith, Oh, because you take Jackson Smith with the 103 or the 104. You own 3 picks in a row.
Yeah,
Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, you have no
I
depth.
have no depth. This land. Sky Moore is back up. I would go get Garrett Wilson.
If you have the 102, the thing is with the quarterbacks you have, Deshaun Watson could totally come back and be that guy this year, and I would not be fully surprised. If you have the shot to get Garrett Wilson for the 103, I would do it, and I think getting JSN at 4 would be masterful. If you could snap, because 102, you hope Bijan goes, so then you can get one of the 2 quarterbacks that you believe in. If Bijan didn't go, you could go Bijan at 2, and then
you hammer Bijan at 102.
If you've got Garrett Wilson with your 103 pick, you could even get a quarterback at 104. Because the way that receiver works, you could kind of slum it for a year. You could always find somebody on waivers as well. You could slum it for a year, and next year's rookie draft, there's going to be receivers to be had. And if you don't contend this year, you could be in the running for a Marvin Harrison Jr. You could be in the running for a Caleb Williams. So you can't really lose, whichever way it goes. Worst case, you traded for Wilson, so now you have JSN and Wilson out of those 2 slots, and then you bring in CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. But yeah, for me, I'm trading that 3rd pick for Garrett Wilson because he was my number 1 receiver in drafts last year. And I think he's arguably the best receiver in this year's draft because I have JSN as the number 1 guy on my board. I think he's an absolute stud. But yeah, no, I think you can safely trade the 103 with that little stretch you have. Yeah. 103 is probably there's no
Does
advantage.
anyone need to throw more in with?
Nope.
Let me go back to this: Wilson, Cousins, or Murray, Cousins, and Tannehill. No, here's why. Here's why. Because if you're giving up the 103, if that person doesn't have the 101, but the 101's Bijan anyways, they most likely will get Stroud or Young, whichever one you don't pick, because they have to. Murray's not playing the first 5 to 7 weeks. Tannehill doesn't put up points.
He's droppable at this point in dynasty formats, in my opinion. He's
it's
QB3. The output since AJ Brown's been gone, I'm just not going to bet on him to win me weeks or even keep me in games.
Yeah, no. I think it's fair. Maybe you could throw in a little more for Garrett Wilson, like if we were analyzing this trade from the outside, but if you are sending the 103 and they accept that.
Oh yeah, and if they offer Garrett Wilson for 103, take it.
I don't think anybody's getting fleeced in this situation because you are filling his need. He's going to get a quarterback, and you're filling your need. You get a solid wide receiver for a very long time. So I don't think it's a fleece on either side. I would lean Garrett Wilson over the 103. But
the deal will age in your favor if you're pulling Garrett Wilson here, just because he's a established player and he probably is going to improve year over year. It's not like you're trading the 103 this year for Justin Jefferson. It's a fair deal. It's a fair deal. So I'd do it. Yeah. If they're going to hit accept on that, do it 100%.
I would hammer that trade.
You still have the options either way moving forward.
So I think, for sure. And the biggest thing, and I'm kind of a proponent of this, is like, collusion happens. Like it is real. It does happen across the board. But if you send over a trade, and this is, a somewhat fair trade, and you send your 103 for Garrett Wilson, they hit accept. If they value it, it is what it is. A trade is a trade if both parties accept, regardless of who is in it. Collusion is real and it happens, but in this sense, you're offering a good pick for a good wide receiver. And if they value the 103 more than Garrett Wilson because they need a quarterback, it's a completely fair trade.
Yeah, no. Values are all in the eye of the beholder. If you're trading something that somebody needs, who's to say what they're willing to give up?
But I think this is a perfect place.
Trade 4 minutes ago. Sweet.
Love that.
Happy to hear that for you, Marvin. We gotta come back around after the rookie draft. Let us know how that panned out for you at the 102 and 104.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll be
I'm looking
doing
forward to seeing the roster.
we'll be ranking wide receivers in 2 weeks. So Garrett Wilson is going to be pretty high up there for sure. But I think number 15 is the perfect place to stop. We're a little over time. So we're going to get on out of here. Mark, thanks for checking in and talking with us about the trade. Always enjoy stuff like that for sure. So as always, like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz to support the channel. We are here every Monday night. Next week, we'll be doing running back rankings. The week after that, wide receivers. And the week after that, tight ends. So 3 more weeks of fantasy to go. If you, like Marvin, jump in the chat, ask about trades, just talk fantasy. We're more than willing to do that too. We had about 20 guys lined up. We got to 15. It is what it is.
To be fair, I spent like
live show
15 minutes on Patrick Mahomes.
Defending Herbert.
Yeah, that.
Appreciate you, Marvin.
Appreciate you. No, yeah,
we'll be here. We'll be here every Monday.
I'm looking forward to running backs. That way I can scream the gospel of Austin Eckler being top 5 and not being higher than top 5. Because the name of the game at running back is youth, and I've emphasized that a bit with quarterbacks, but quarterbacks tend to age better than the guys that have to go between the tackles. But speaking of having to go, yeah, it's about that time, Austin. So if you're all set, I think there's only room for one more word.
Hit me with it.
Peace.